This was my identity.
Nobody talks about how freaking hard it is to be a dentist. What most people talk about is how this affects the patient. What nobody talks about is how this affects us. Dentistry is ready for this. Now is really the time.
Welcome to Wellness and Dentistry, where today we're going to be talking about what happens when the practice owns you. I'm joined by my good friend and co-host, Dr. Kyle Stanley, who is a dentist, tech entrepreneur, speaker, and researcher. And my name is Dr. Martin Mendelson. I'm a disabled dentist, coach, speaker, and author. And my first book, One Move Makes All the Difference, is available wherever books are sold. And together, we've helped thousands of dental professionals pursue wellness and dentistry. And if you're unfamiliar with us, we invite you to check out our respective links, websites, and course offerings on our combined website, wellnessanddentistry.com. So, Kyle, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. It's great weather here in Southern
Yeah.
California. I was at the beach earlier today, going on a walk with my friend. So yeah, I'm doing really well.
Yeah, and now you got pulled inside to record. Well, that's
Yeah, I know, right? My kids are all playing outside. My wife's sitting
yeah.
outside.
Yeah. Well,
So,
I'm sitting here in Phoenix and we typically record ahead of when we publish and we're sitting in the warmest March on record. So it's
wow.
over 100 degrees
Oh
here
my
in
gosh.
Phoenix. Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, this topic of what happens when the practice owns you really resonates with me
Hmm.
because I we bought a practice. We bought a practice so that I could own a practice, so that I could have autonomy, so that I could decide when I want to work, decide when I don't want to work,
Hmm.
and really be, you know, I guess it was the autonomy that I wanted,
Yep.
right? But just a few years in, just I would say 2 years in, my practice for sure owned me. And not only my practice owned me, but my whole profession really owned me too.
Yeah.
I like my practice told me when to come in. My
Mhm.
practice told me what I could do.
Yep.
And this is what led to part of my burnout
Hmm.
was feeling like I was always needed at my practice, but I was also always needed at home.
Yep.
And so I never really felt comfortable where I was. When I was at home, I was like, gosh, I should be at my practice. I should be writing those notes and doing those case pans and stuff. And then when I was at my practice, I was like, oh gosh, my wife's waiting for me to come home and my kid needs a dad and all that stuff.
Hmm.
And it made it very challenging for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I can say that I experience a lot of that myself as an associate, but as a coach and a speaker, I see this all the time from hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of dentists, and it takes different forms. It's, the notes, it's worrying about team stuff. It's these days worrying about social media, should you be posting and those personal boundaries that we, or shall I say, many of us either have trouble putting up or trouble maintaining after they're established, can really take a toll on us mentally over time and really lead to pretty significant burnout and other mental health challenges.
With me, something I still struggle with is being content,
Yeah.
not growing for a little
Mhm.
bit. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah. What do you
it's like,
mean by being content though?
well, like being content with what I'm making, what
Mm,
I'm creating, how many
sure.
people I'm helping. If I think of myself in dental school right now, and I told myself then
Hmm.
what my life is right now, my dental school self would be like, that is incredible. Like
Yeah.
you have
Agreed. Yeah.
an incredible life, right?
Hmm.
But I'm like, okay, I got to this certain point, now I want to get here. I got to this certain point, now I want to
Hmm.
get here. I got this certain thingy, now I want to get a better thingy. I,
Well,
I still
we
struggle with that.
okay, so we talked about this on the podcast before. This goes to the research around happiness leads to success, not the other way around.
Yeah.
And if you've ever read Sean Accor's book, by the way, I don't know if you saw, he's coming out with a latest book. He hasn't published one since 2018. I'm super
Oh,
excited.
wow.
I should email him and go, how am I going to get a signed copy? But
Yeah.
so what happens is, and they've done this research with lottery winners. We talked about this before. Some people call it hedonic adaptation, where
Yeah.
you get an achievement and then you work so hard for that achievement, then you get it. It does breed happiness for a little while, but then you go to your baseline level of happiness, whatever that is for you, and you
Yeah.
literally say, as you just did, basically, okay, now what? So
Yeah.
it's and I want to be careful, as we've also said before, we're not saying that you shouldn't grind. But there's a difference between a short-term grind to achieve a specific goal, and just a way of living. It's two
Yes.
different things.
Hmm.
So it's something we all need to be really, really careful of. And because of the nature of today's society where, everybody has basically their practice in their phone, right?
Yeah.
It's very difficult to get away from stuff. So, a lot of this has to do with sitting down and thinking about, we could go through some tactical ideas here about, what are the things that are driving me crazy? What are the things that are driving my stress? How do I put some boundaries up, and how do I keep myself accountable to those boundaries that I've established, right?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the first things you have to do is you really have to establish that your practice is not your self-worth.
Yeah.
Your practice is not your identity.
Yep.
And that is a very hard thing for we dentists to do
Hmm.
because we have our entire self-worth in our clinical work,
Yeah.
in our body of work,
Hmm.
It's like
Hmm.
we're like an artist, really, like
True.
all those people walking around with our crowns and implants and dentures
Hmm.
in their mouth. We really think of that as like our body of work. And once you separate your purpose in life, your identity in life from this clinical work, it's funny how you can actually enjoy dentistry again. You can be look forward to coming into your practice. And this is
Yeah.
actually an exercise that we do in our Light Side Life programs where we have people go through and say who they are, say
Yeah.
what they want to be known for when they can't do dentistry anymore.
Yeah.
And I've seen this with my dad when he retired, was like he kind of felt useless.
Mm.
It's like, I've been helping people with their teeth the last 45 years. Now, what am I doing?
Well, and it's interesting because I saw that with my father, who was not a dentist, and he was a very successful engineer and then executive in the aerospace industry. And he retired, he never really had any hobbies. And so when he retired, it was kind of like, now what? And so what I noticed was he started doing consulting.
Hmm.
And at one point, he was the highest paid consultant in aerospace. But, and then when that stuff started to end, it's like, okay, now what? Like,
Yeah.
what are you going to do now? And so it hits high achievers really, pretty significantly. And those that really have spent a lot of time and effort on their craft, on their profession, on their job, if you will, however you want to couch that.
Yeah, so I think step zero and what we're talking about today is remove your self-worth from your practice and from your clinical work. And
I would say maybe that's not the first step. I think that's a goal.
mm,
So for me, it would be more around, okay, let's be honest with ourselves and think about what are my primary stressors? What are the things that
right,
are
so you're
keeping
going
me
back to kind of
away?
the ripple effect right now, right? You're
Yeah,
going back to realizing what the problems are,
yeah,
identifying them.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
guess I should probably just follow my own framework, right?
Well, the example I love using is actually thanks to you because about 2 years, almost 2 years ago now ish, I realized I was spending an inordinate amount of time on the administration side of my business. And so I said to you, I was like, do you have a bookkeeper? And you're like,
Mm,
yeah, I've been working with her for 10 years. So I
hmm.
got a bookkeeper. Then I changed CPAs that works with my bookkeeper, our bookkeeper now. And I hate doing financial stuff because I'm not very good at it. I don't
Yeah.
like doing it, and it takes me a lot of time and I get frustrated. So now I have a bookkeeper that deals with the books every month, a CPA that clicks into QuickBooks that just simply ask me questions at tax time. I don't have to produce anything other than the documents I'm sent, which is you can't get away from that.
Yeah.
And now it's flipped to like almost enjoying the process because I've eliminated the stuff I don't like
Hmm.
and it's giving me more time back. So I used to use my quote time off in the month of December to get taxes set up. Well, now I can just go play.
Hmm.
So, that's just one example of realizing that you have something you don't like, that you don't feel you're necessarily as competent as you need to be in it, that's taking a lot of time. Well, how can we deal with that so that we don't have to spend our time, effort, and mental mental energy on that anymore, right?
Yeah, I think maybe another step would be to establish boundaries. So figure
Hmm.
out what you want your boundaries to be,
Yeah.
and then communicate them with the people you need to communicate them to. And
Yes.
so I would
100%.
say, if I'm just thinking out loud here, you need to communicate them to with your family or your partner that you live with.
Yeah.
You need to communicate them to your team,
Yep.
and then you need to communicate them to yourself.
Yes. Oh, 100%. So, this is something I hear all the time. You go on vacation and your team keeps texting you. And
Yeah.
so you have to have the conversation ahead of time. Look, folks, I'm going away on vacation. Dr. So and so is covering for me clinically. I really only want to be contacted if, something's on fire or flooding, right? And so you have to set those clear boundaries. Then, as part of the conversation, because I've seen this one too many times, I'm going to add something that I've not really added in the past, which is this. So let's say I'm talking to you, Kyle, as my office manager, and I say, okay, Kyle, so listen, Dr. Anderson's going to cover for me clinically. I really, don't need to be contacted unless something's on fire, something's flooded, or our bank accounts have been stolen. And so you go, okay, great. It's like, okay, Kyle, so let me ask you this. I know that you're very dedicated to the practice. If for some reason you just kind of naturally contact me and say, "Hey, doc, I want to ask you about so and so," how would you like me to remind you of the boundary?
Mm, I love that.
Isn't that fun?
I love that. Yeah.
Because then you turn it back on the person.
Yep.
And I hadn't because I just see this over and over and over again. And so for me in my crazy head, it does two things. A, it allows the person to be more of a self leader because I think everybody could guess that only probably has to happen once or twice before they don't do it again. But two, it gives you what to do when the boundary, see, because that's the problem.
Yeah.
Because
People don't want to enforce the boundary.
you're on the beach, someone texts you and you're like, ugh.
Yep.
And then you sit there, right, ladies and gentlemen who are listening, and you go, what do I do? Didn't we talk about this? Blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
blah. Oh, let me just answer.
Yeah.
It's like, no, please don't do that. Give
Hmm.
yourself I'll call it script ahead of time so that
Yep.
you can help yourself keep your own damn boundary
Yeah.
that you started.
Now that's really good. Okay, so we've got looking at what's causing the stress with
Hmm.
when your practice owns you,
Yeah.
identifying what these are, changing your identity to be
Yeah.
somebody who doesn't have their self-worth entirely tied up in their
Yeah.
clinical skills or in their
Hmm.
practice success.
Hmm.
Then we're going to set boundaries with our team, with our family, with
Yeah.
ourselves.
Yeah.
What other steps do you think we need to do on this?
I think part of it is organization, to be honest with you. So I talk a lot about
Mm.
this in my course. I love the name From Sticky Notes to Sanity,
Hmm.
because you need a system, folks, to capture stuff. And so if you haven't read the book, Getting Things Done by David Allen, I highly recommend it. But what he talks about, which comes from research, and I can tell you on a subjective level, it is absolutely true. When you account for something so you don't have to worry about it later, it reduces your stress. So
Can you say that
for
again?
when you have a system that you can account for things so that you don't have to remember it later, it reduces your stress.
Yeah.
And then you have to trust your system implicitly.
Right.
So for me, as an example, let's say I remember on a Saturday afternoon that I needed to send, actually, this just happened. This just happened. I remembered because I didn't write it down that I have to send somebody a synopsis for a webinar in the fall. Now we're sitting here, it's Friday afternoon. I'm not going to do it today. What did I do? I put a note on my calendar. Now, this is an important nuance. I scheduled time on my calendar. Let me rephrase.
Mm-hmm.
I scheduled time on my calendar on Monday to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I will not have to think about that again the entire weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Now, think about if I didn't do that. Oh, I got to remember to do that. I got to remember to do that. You got to have a system for capture. And
Yeah.
please don't make it sticky notes. And please
Mm-hmm.
don't make it manual. And so that you can get this stuff off your head.
This is something that I've been trying to get across to my wife. My wife doesn't want to do digital grocery lists,
Uh-huh.
so she'll write it down manually,
Yeah.
and then she'll forget the the paper list.
Oh,
And I'm like, just do it on your phone while we're talking.
yeah.
Like, let's just do it together,
Yeah.
and then you don't have to remember to bring anything.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I really like writing
Yeah.
things down. I'm like, that's totally fine, but you have to bring it.
Fair. Yeah. Fair. You know what you should do? You should get her one of those, like the Remarkable or whatever, so she can physically write it down, but it syncs with her phone.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
Because I get really crazy with my grocery list. I like to order it in the order of the grocery store.
Oh, okay.
I do. I do. I
Hmm.
do. It's like I'm crazy like that, but yes, I do. So,
So what else can we do? So we've realized that we have a problem that we're,
yeah.
married to our practice, let's say,
Yeah.
or our practice owns us.
Yeah.
We've identified some of these stressors.
Yeah.
We have tried to change our identity to be someone
Hmm.
who doesn't have our entire self-worth tied
Hmm.
up with our practice success.
Yep.
We've set boundaries with people and we've started to organize. I
Hmm.
mean, let's be honest, that's a lot of work right there.
Yeah, it
In
is.
all of
Well,
that. I'm going over it very quickly, but just
yeah.
for those listening,
Yeah.
these are not things that happen fast.
No, 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 no. And look, you've been in practice for, 1 year, 10 years, 20 years, whatever. Like you were just fine up till now. Now, granted, it wasn't that easy because you're looking for a change,
Hmm.
but you've survived 100% of your worst days. You're good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, one will always be greater than zero, one of my favorite phrases. So as long as you're making progress, that's a good thing.
Hmm.
I think the other thing that we haven't talked about is don't be an island. Like, there's so much out there today. You can't assume you're going to know everything about everything. And so if you're looking for a better solution for charting, for phones, for AI, for whatever, don't be an island. Like reach out to colleagues, friends, AI, ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever, Claude, to give yourself an understanding of what options are available to you to address some of these things because you can address your challenges all day long, but there's likely multiple solutions to them. And, even if you tried something and before and it didn't work for you, well, there might be something else out there that somebody else has used that you just don't know because you didn't ask the question. So,
Hmm.
not being an island, I think, is really important as well.
Yeah, as you were talking about that too, I was also thinking, we just finished my course, Your Best Year Ever in Dentistry, which is all about business and financial awareness in dentistry and hiring and firing and organization and all of the business side of dentistry.
Yeah.
And what I realized with so many people that were on that course is they were married to their practice, and a lot of what bothered them, they thought they couldn't change, you know,
Yes.
but they really could change. They just didn't
Yeah.
know either what to change was the first one, like,
Yeah.
what do I even start with? Or they were
Yeah.
so overwhelmed
Yeah.
that they didn't know what's step one, what's step two, what's
Hmm.
step three. And this course went on for about 2 months. And just in 2 months, we had so many big breakthroughs.
Yeah.
I mean, people were increasing their production, they were decreasing their overhead, they were setting boundaries with their team members, they were implementing employee handbooks
Yep.
and employee job descriptions and quarterly goals and new scheduling techniques.
Yeah.
And so much of it came from just that, like, they didn't know what was possible, I think.
Hmm.
And they were in there's a phrase that you say where like you're so overwhelmed that you don't move. What is that you say? You say something like frozen.
Not, I don't, I don't remember.
I've heard you say something before where it's like you there's too many decisions, so you
Oh,
can't
just
do.
yeah, there's so you just get stuck. There's too many things to choose from, so you just don't choose any because you're
Yes.
just so frazzled. Yeah.
Yeah. And we did an exercise in that where you go through a special P&L that I
Hmm.
created
Hmm.
that shows you when things are green, yellow, or red,
Yeah.
good, bad, or okay.
Yeah.
And then it prioritizes all the things that are bad and
Hmm.
which ones you should do first. And it was crazy for people to just be like, okay, here's what I'm doing well. Oh, wow, I didn't realize my staffing cost was so high. Maybe I have too many
Yeah.
assistants, or
Yeah.
maybe it's okay because you're in this
Sure.
high area, right? But it was like all of these unknown unknowns,
Yeah.
once they were known
Yeah.
unknowns,
Yeah.
then people could solve them.
Well, and people don't do that. People uh, have a similar experience with just time and time management because you feel like your time broke, but have you really evaluated just for a week or two, depending on your life, a week to four, it just depends on who you are and the variability of your life, how you're actually spending your time.
Yeah.
Because what you think you're spending your time on, I'm not going to believe you until you
Hmm.
actually write it down. It's just
Yep.
like eating, right?
Totally.
Like
You're like, I don't
I
eat that many sweets, or
yeah, it's like
I don't drink that many beers. And
yeah,
then you're like,
yeah,
oh, I'm having 2 beers a night. Okay.
yeah, yeah,
Oh, wow, that's a
exactly.
significant amount of calories,
Yeah, exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
it adds up.
Yeah. Um, I was gonna say something about the decision fatigue and the having too many things at once, and
Well, what it
that
makes
just
me
flew out of
think
my
of
head.
is what you talk about with the quadrant that I can't think of the name right
Oh,
now
the
either.
Eisenhower matrix. Boy,
Eisenhower matrix.
we're a good pair today, aren't we?
I
Neither
know,
one of us
yeah.
can remember
I
anything.
can't remember something, then you remember it, and you can't remember something, then I remember it. Yeah,
That's
the
funny.
Eisenhower matrix. Can you talk about that for someone who
Yeah,
hadn't
so it
heard
was
that on our
developed by
previous episodes?
yeah, it was developed by President Dwight D. Eisenhower. And it's a four quadrant system that's based on importance versus urgency. And so, top left, it's urgent and important. So that's stuff you need to do, quickly or that's time bound. To the right of it is important but not urgent. That's where your life makes or breaks you. So it's important stuff, but nobody's holding your feet to the fire to get it done. Like for example, physical fitness.
Going to the
Is it
gym.
important? Yep. Is it
Yep.
urgent? Well, are you going to die if you don't go to the gym today? No.
Yeah.
So that's a good example. Then the lower left quadrant is urgent but not important. So this is the kind of stuff that I use my virtual assistant for. Jaime, he's fantastic. So there might be something on my website that's wrong. That needs to be fixed, but it's not important for me to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I delegate that to him.
Mm-hmm.
And then last but not least, not urgent, not important. Why are you spending your time on this at all? That's the
Mm-hmm.
elimination quadrant. So the way I teach this is, you chunk things into buckets, you put them in the quadrants, and then within the quadrants, you need to make decisions. So in the top left, how are we going to keep all the stuff that's time bound and important so it gets done? And we need to be honest with ourselves, by the way. It's like, do you really need to do this? Do you really need to do this? Um,
Right.
then to the right, um, understanding how to use a calendar versus a to-do list, because they're two different things. And then the whole art of delegation, which is all communication, et cetera. Um, so all of this stuff has skills associated with it that can really change the face of how you feel about your days because you're going to feel much more in control of what needs to be done. And going back to the example that I gave about the webinar thing and writing it down on a Saturday afternoon, when you have everything captured, then when let's just say turn the alarm on in your practice and leave as an example, you have the ability to shut it off. Why? Because you know everything's accounted for. Because think about it, folks. What are you worried about? You're worried about all the stuff in terms of logistical stuff, right? Um, that needs to be done. And you're worried about it because it's not accounted for effectively. But if you trust your system, you're like, because I do this now and I've been doing it for years. I'm like, that'll happen next week or when it's supposed to. I don't even have to worry about it. And I don't, but it takes a while to get there.
Yeah, and what's interesting is in that course that I just finished, Your Best Year Ever in Dentistry, so much of what I taught was systems
Yeah, 100%.
so that the dentists can get back to doing what they love to do, which is
Yeah,
prepping teeth,
yeah,
extracting teeth, placing implants, doing
yeah,
veneers.
yeah.
When you have
And
the systems in place, then you can actually focus on that. And you can do it in the right time. So you can be the dentist at times, you can be the CEO at times, but you don't have to do both at the same time.
so one of the things I was working through with one of my clients, I think you're going to like this because you've been away on vacation. I didn't get a chance to tell you this, but it was so fun. So I'm a huge AI user, huge, like, and I love it, and I use it I use it consistently and interactively. It doesn't make stuff for me; it helps me create my own stuff.
Yeah.
And so this doc was getting stuck, and he really needed standard operating procedures. He really needed to communicate his expectations, et cetera. And so, what we worked through, he mentioned that he had one that he liked that was done. I was like, well, then you know what? There's your template.
Yeah.
I said, and then you go to your team and you just ask them for bullets.
Yep. Exactly
And then
right.
you suck the bullets into ChatGPT,
Hmm.
Claude, Gemini, whatever,
Hmm.
and it mirrors the one that you like.
Yep.
And then you're done,
Yeah.
right? So, furthermore, if you need to make a minor change, that's one of the things I love about AI too, which is to me at least in my hands, editing or augmenting things is a hell of a lot quicker. So you go
Hmm.
back to something specific and you say, hey, I forgot to add in blah, blah, blah in this section. Can you please regenerate with that addition?
Hmm.
Done. It just makes things so much more efficient. Or, frankly, your office manager does that if they
Right.
can, right?
Yeah. Even more. I mean, if you can create the hierarchy,
Yeah,
then you're at the top and you only deal with 10% of the problems.
yeah. And honestly, let's take this example I just gave you. Let's say, for example, your office manager was using AI, your office manager had the template, was working on this other stuff. Well, he or she's spending the time to generate it. Are you going to review it? Of course you are. But that's going to
Hmm.
take you 5 to 10 minutes versus 10 to 20 minutes or 30 or 60. So, all this, the time that you spend for all these relatively minor things, they all add up, right?
Hmm.
You can't get away from that. So,
Well, let's bring this into land. What are your final thoughts on what happens when your practice owns you?
yeah, I think you got to step back and realize, talk about the Ripple framework, what it is that's owning you. What are you spending your time on, which can only come out of a time audit? Where within those are you getting the most stress? That creates your prioritization. What opportunities are there to reduce or eliminate your responsibility in there? So that comes from systems, that comes from not being an island, that comes from AI, that comes from delegation. And then having the consistency not to bite off everything at once, just take one thing at a time and learn from those experiences and then start extrapolating over time because you don't have to do everything in one day.
Yeah.
One thing a week, one thing a month, depending on what that thing is,
Hmm.
can be hugely liberating. And get a system. And if you're stuck on how to do that, in my course, I've split my course up into constituent parts. So there's a whole time and task audit course in there for you to understand how to do this, how I think about it. But, just like eating, if you're not tracking your time, you don't know how you're spending your time. And you can try to tell me all day long that you do, but I'll challenge you back. You do not. You do
Yeah.
not. So
Yeah,
that's what I would
I
say.
think for me, the biggest change will come with what I started talking about in this episode, which is when you disconnect your
Yeah.
self-worth with your
Yeah.
practice success or with your
Yeah.
clinical success. So with all the other stuff that we talked about, even if you do all that other stuff and you don't separate your identity,
Mhm.
it won't work. So
Yeah.
it's a challenging thing though, and it's a thing that is constantly going to try to pull you back in,
Yeah.
just like someone who's in recovery from
Mhm.
alcohol or narcotics or
Yeah.
sex addiction or something, you're always in recovery from dentistry.
Yeah.
That's
100%.
kind of how it is. So
100%.
well, guys, if you like this, if you want to hang out with us more, Martin and I do sometimes do 2-day transformational courses. We may have one on the website right now, or we may not, depending on when this comes out. So you can go to wellnessanddentistry.com. You'll see all of our other courses, our online courses, if we have in-person courses available at this time. And we thank you for listening to the podcast, and we'll see you next week.
Yes. Take care.